Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, July 8th, 2024. On the show today, news, a listener character meal mystery, and a new Universal survey about monsters. Then in our main segment, Jim gives us the turbulent history of EPCOT's Maelstrom ride. Let's get started by bringing in the man who says that all he wants to hear when he brings you breakfast in bed is a sincere thank you. And instead he gets stuff like, who are you? And how did you get into my house? Which is frankly disappointing given the effort he put in. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
What I love about this question is I literally sent you this morning photograph of the blueberry muffins I made just this morning. And
they look fantastic. They look great.
Well, again, but it is hard carrying the tray with the muffins and the ladder to get in the second story window. But
do you find that like the mask inhibits your ability to check that the muffins are done properly, or by this time have you just you're going to kind of eyeball it?
It's just it's more the knife you have to stick into the muffins to make sure it comes out clean that they're cooked. People never understand that when you carry that into the bedroom. It's like so.
It's all just a bunch of misunderstandings.
There we go.
All right, Jim, let's do a quick shout out to our subscribers on Patreon. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/Jim Hill Media, including Allison Quinn, Horton, Jessica Berry, Todd Bagley, J-Ho Retina MD, and Stephen Tegthoff. Jim, these are the Disney Imagineers hard at work reimagining Act 4 in Tomorrowland's Carousel of Progress. So far, their updates include Dad shouting, Alexa, what's the weather? To the oven. Patty ordering Uber Eats when the tofurkey gets burned, Uncle Orville butt FaceTiming everyone from the bathroom, and Grandma mining Bitcoin. True story.
I would actually go back into this ride, this show, to see that scene. I except for the Uncle Orville stuff, though. I don't need that. I really don't need that. So.
My mom is at that age where she like I'll call her. And then we'll talk, and then we'll hang up, and then she'll immediately accidentally redial me, but just like throw the phone in her handbag or like on the table or something. And so I just get to hear this ambient noise for the next hour. And I'm like, but then I try and do like ghost voices, like, Carol.
Well, no,
it's time.
Oh dear!
Straight to hell. Hell. All right.
Okay.
On to the news.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, the news is sponsored by TouringPlans.com. Touring Plans helps you save time and money at theme parks like Walt Disney World. Check us out at TouringPlans.com. All right, Jim. Last week we mentioned that with the upcoming changes to Lightning Lane, guests coming from outside the United States would have to wait until they entered the U.S. to purchase Lightning Lane in advance. And we speculated that this was because of the varied and complex tax rules that Disney would have to comply with around the world in all versions of its app. And then on the day the show was released, Disney clarified that residents of Canada will be able to buy in advance as well. So good news for all of our friends up north. Good. But the interesting thing here, Jim, is that we did hear from a number of listeners who work in the international tax industry, which is frankly bizarre that we have that many people who are experts in that area. But whatever, go with it. And all of them confirmed that the complexity around those laws is probably the main reason for the rule. So that makes sense.
You gotta love it when you get validation. But okay. Moving on.
Also, last week, Rock and Roller Coaster opened early, July 1st, from its refurbishment, which I believe was supposed to last until the 27th. So that's good for Hollywood Studios, which needs all the ride capacity it can get. Jim, I believe this refurb, which was fairly lengthy, was supposed to address the significant downtime that Rock and Roller Coaster was experiencing. In 2023, Rock and Roller Coaster averaged about an hour and 45 minutes of downtime per day. Unfortunately, Rock and Roller Coaster was down for about an hour and a half on the day it reopened, and then 3 hours the next day. Good news is we're recording this on Thursday, so on Wednesday it was only down for around 20 minutes, so let's keep an eye on that. But we hope that this refurbishment fixed that downtime issue.
Okay. Has Chrissy managed to make it over to ride it yet, or you, or?
I haven't yet. I will probably the next week or so.
Okay, all right. Love to hear.
Chrissy was busy filming the Magic Kingdom fireworks last night, so I'll ask her. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can't wait to hear about that. So,
also last week, Disney announced the lineup for Food and Wine's Eat to the Beat concert series. And Jim, as I was typing up the show notes, I mistyped Eat to the Beat as Eat to the Bear, which isn't the Bear TV show on Hulu?
Wow.
And it's about a restaurant, right?
That's right. That's right. A sandwich shop. I did. Oh, wow.
How is it not Eat to the Bear?
Well, that's 2025, Len. All right. Just,
Okay, all right, okay, all right.
we'll get there. Okay. So
There's like synergy.
there we go.
Anyway, a couple of new acts for 2024, including Yellow Card and Aloe Black. I'm not going to lie, Jim. Wake Me Up has been on my playlist ever since it came out. Rest in Power, Avicii. So also returning acts include the incomparable Sheila E., Boyz II Men, Hanson, Billy Ocean, and more. So super excited for that, actually. That sounds like a decent lineup.
No, I agree. I agree.
Also, Jim, we didn't get a chance to talk about it last week, but Disney Cruise Line released more details about its final cruise ship in this series, the Disney Adventure, which will be sailing from Singapore starting next year. And so remember, Jim, this is the repurposed Global Dream, which was, I believe at the time, the largest cruise ship in the world.
Oh, yeah.
So Disney says 6,700 passengers and 2,500 crew. So to put that in perspective, the Adventure holds more passengers than the Magic and the Wish combined.
Okay.
It is huge. All right, and I am irrationally excited about this ship, Jim. I'm going, opening day, right?
Okay.
So 3 and 4 night sailings from the Marina Bay Cruise Center in Singapore. And because this ship is so big, Disney's essentially breaking the ship up into lands for easier navigation. Did you see this?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm intrigued by the grouping. So the hosts, which IPs are going to be sharing a bunk, so to speak. So yeah.
Well, this is the thing. Like it has to be something that would appeal to that market, right? So you would think, based on our conversations with Imagineer Jim Scholl, that it would be newer intellectual property, newer franchises, and that seems to make sense. So we've got one area called Imagination Garden, which Disney describes as an enchanted valley where you can explore the worlds of Magali, Moana, and more with dazzling open-air stage performances. Also, there's Discovery Reef, which includes characters from The Little Mermaid, Lilo and Stitch, Finding Nemo, and Luca, with themed shopping and dining. There's San Fransokyo?
Big Hero 6.
Big Hero 6. Okay, which again, new franchise. Wayfinder Bay, which is poolside with Pacific Islands inspired decor from Moana. A Town Square, which is classic Disney Kingdoms. Marvel Landing, so Avengers stuff, and then Toy Story Place. Jim, I'm impressed here for a number of reasons. Number one, the ship is big enough that it has discrete lands. That's kind of great.
That is.
But also their choices here seem a lot of fun. So this sounds good.
Okay, I forgive me for throwing this on the table though, but when and again, you mentioned that holds more passengers than the Disney Magic and the Disney Wish combined. We have Disney, at least in the U.S. market, has established that onboarding moment where you enter the atrium and they announce the family and that sort of thing. With 6,700 passengers coming onto the boat, is that going to be even physically possible to have a sort of an atrium in a big moment? Or, I mean...
Okay, here's what I'm thinking. You ever seen like those farming videos where you've got a giant combine that like sucks up all the plants and then it shoots it out of a chute into another vehicle running nearby? I'm thinking it's like that. There's just gonna be this like harvester thing that just plows through the waiting area and just shoots people up onto the ship through the air. That seems like it's the most efficient.
Okay, there we go. I mean, I have to admit the logistics of this just fascinate me. And again, given that it sounds like you and Laurel will be going early, I'm gonna love to hear the stories from the initial sailing. So
it's kind of funny. I'm trying to convince Laurel to do it, and she's like, she's kind of on the fence about it. So, but the one thing is if we're going all the way over there, we'll probably end up doing the at least one of the other parks in the area. So that should be a hoot.
That makes sense.
Anyway, irrationally excited for this. I cannot wait. The 3 and 4 night sailings are interesting because given the size of the ship, there's no way that you can see it in 3 nights.
Oh God, yeah. I mean,
and I wonder how many people are going to back-to-back it and just make it a 7-night sailing.
Also an interesting question. I mean, this is terra incognita with the ship, and it just, again, how it's going to operate and people getting on, getting off, how they're going to experience it, just cannot wait.
I'm very excited. Yeah. All right, Jim, on to surveys. A number of listeners, including Diana and Nikki and others, sent in a new Universal Orlando survey about Epic Universe's Monster Guest Makeup Boutique. Jim, you and I talked about this on an earlier show, and we used the analogy of it's like Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, but for monsters. And so one of the great things, so this is a fantastic survey that Universal has sent out. And one of the things that I found super interesting about it is that the survey includes photographs of some of the things you'll be able to choose from in this makeup experience. So hats off to Universal's survey team for this. It's a great job. All right, so let's go through the questions real quick. The setup is this. Imagine Universal is considering offering a transformation experience that physically transforms guests during their day at the theme park. A transformation experience could include makeup, cosplay, hairstyling, nail art, temporary tattoos, or other temporary physical alterations to a guest's experience. And then the first question is obviously, how interested would you be in doing this? So from very interested to very uninterested. And then it says, please rank how important each of the following are when it comes to a transformation experience in a Universal theme park, with one being the most important. As a reminder, a transformation experience could include makeup, cosplay, etc. So the choices here are immersion in a themed environment, the ability to customize or personalize my experience, exclusivity, only the experience, it's only an experience I can get at a Universal theme park. It has to look realistic, and it has to be delivered by professional makeup, costume, or tattoo artists. All right.
Okay.
So the next question is, and I love this, assuming you're interested in a transformation experience, which intellectual properties, movies, TV shows, games, or books, would you be interested in experiencing as a theme for your transformational experience? And one of our listeners entered, the Universal Monsters, obviously, but also Scooby-Doo. And Jim, who owns the theme park rights to Scooby-Doo right now?
Well, technically, Universal has they actually do what Shaggy and Scooby and the Mystery Machine as sort of a guest encounter. I mean, typically you'll find them on Hollywood Boulevard in Florida, but. I mean, this sort of theme park ride. I mean, the notion of basically the guests are asking to be transformed into the old guys. I would have gotten away with it with those meddling kids.
Exactly. That's the first thing I thought of, is like, I want to be one of those.
Yeah. But kind of interesting.
All right, so you get to ask about the IP, so that's good. So now we've said, how interested are you? What's most important to you? And which intellectual property are you interested in? But it gets even more interesting because the next question is please read the description on the next page and look at the images included before moving on. The images that you're about to see are intended to capture the spirit and general idea of what could be possible. And Jim, in the show notes, you can see them here. I've added the photographs, but it includes forearm tattoos in different designs. One of them includes a spider and a bat in different sizes and colors, and then a couple of other ones look like they're wounds, like bleeding, like your arm is bleeding from different places. So it says, based on this description, how interested would you personally be in this experience?
Wow.
And then the next question is are there any members of your household that would be at least somewhat or very interested in this experience? So I love this question for two reasons. One, it asks you your opinion, obviously the survey taker, but also, do you think someone else might be interested in your household? So it's able to capture not only your specific view, but of anyone you're traveling with.
And what's interesting about that is that also indicates they're trying to sort of dial in, all right, is this something that preteens, teens, adults would be interested in this experience? Because obviously you still have to build the physical plant to do this. So it's a question of how big is the shop? How many seats are we going to need? How many stations? All of this.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the age thing, because there's a question later on that says, who do you think would be interested in this experience? And it breaks it down into girls and boys and men and women, under age 6, 7 to 12, 13 to 17, and so on. So they're actually asking the demographics there, but they also ask an objection question here. So why would you not be interested in this experience? And the options, and you can choose more than one, are things like, it's going to take too long, it's going to cost too much, I don't like these kinds of things, I'd be concerned about the product or the durability of it, I've done it before and don't need to do it again. I don't like monsters. And then, some other reason. So not only are they looking to see who might be interested, they're actually collecting data ahead of time to overcome objections about why you wouldn't do it. And again, from a marketing perspective, you want to address all of those things up front.
No, absolutely. I mean, again, what's interesting, think about it. We are now in crunch time over.
You were less than a year out. Yeah. I think.
And so you are making hard choices about where you're spending resources, not only money, but time to get this stuff done. So,
right.
That's
interesting.
I mean,
we're at the point now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No. Just the fact that they're gathering this info now, I think, is fascinating.
Yeah, we know that it's coming. Now they're trying to market it and make as much money as possible. All right, so and speaking of money, I love these questions. Next, would like to understand how much you think this experience should cost. And so there are questions like, at what price point would you consider this to be too expensive? And then at what price point would you consider this to be priced so low that you would question its quality?
Oof, wow.
And then at what point would you consider this experience to be starting to get expensive? Mm-hmm. So it's not out of the question, but you'd have to think about it. Mm-hmm. And then also the opposite side of that is, at what price point would you consider this to be a bargain, like a great buy for the money? Mm-hmm. And then the last question is, how much would you actually expect to pay? So think about how they bracket that. They start with a wide bracket, then they narrow it down, then they ask you for the exact price point that you would pay. Mm-hmm. And again, I mean, this is a really well-designed survey.
Oh, absolutely. But at the same time, remember, one of the things that's driving this is Universal looking over the fence at the money that Disney makes off of Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. And
right.
I don't want to say this is an apples to oranges situation, but face it, if you're a parent and you brought your child to a Disney castle park and they're going to be interacting with princesses somewhere along the line, it's just sort of like there's an internal math where it's like, okay, this is painful, but I'm creating a childhood memory, and so something my child will treasure forever. And I think the folks on the Universal side of the fence are like, does this translate? Will people want to do the same thing in Dark Universe? Will they want to dress up as a monster and then get their picture taken with the Bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster? I don't know if we can actually answer that question yet. So that's why this hyper detailed survey.
Yeah, and that brings up a great point. So we know that Disney has Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, and they tried a Pirates League, but then it closed.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's more, God, you'll pardon the pun, more universal appeal for monsters than there is for princesses?
Well, I think that what's intriguing here is, remember, we had Disney launched Pirate League basically at the height of the Pirates of the Caribbean film franchise, which, by the way, they still want to revisit. There's supposedly 2 separate projects in development that Jerry Bruckheimer is looking at about ways to bring pirates back as a movie franchise. But the notion of you step through that portal into the Dark Universe and you're there in an entire village that's monster themed, and it's just sort of like, there are kids and adults who would want to be in that space, immersed in that environment as much as they can. I guess the question is, are there enough of them on a daily basis to keep a shop of size that does just this? The tattoos, the makeup, the cosplay up and running. I don't know.
Interesting. I think there is. I mean, I think just the appeal of the goth look to kids and to even people our age, is something we've seen since the 80s. So I think it's sort of an ongoing classic look now. I think it's entirely possible. I think this is a super well-designed survey. So, I mean, hats off to Universal there. There's a bunch of other questions that I've put in the show notes in case anyone wants to see more of it. But yeah, really, really well-designed survey here from Universal. I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Okay.
All right, Jim, on to listener emails. A number of folks emailed me about a Reddit thread talking about a June 21st Wall Street Journal article titled "Happily Paying a Mouse's Ransom" by Elliot Ackerman. And everyone had the same question. Did the Wall Street Journal run a story that was made up and never happened? And obviously, Jim, that's going to get my attention, right?
Okay.
So let me go through the details here, and I have a link to the story in the show notes. So, Mr. Ackerman visited the Walt Disney World Resort in March of 2024 with his family. He and his family went to a character meal breakfast that included Mickey Mouse, and here's the description of it from the article. So it's the next morning we woke up early. This would be the kids' first day at the Magic Kingdom. The hypothesis of Disney. We had our itinerary planned to the minute to avoid lines. When I arrived at breakfast, an uninvited guest had joined our table. Mickey was mugging for photos with my family. After I insisted that we wrap up the photos, Mickey made a display of trying to fight me. He gestured for me to put up my dukes, and then he blew bon voyage kisses at my wife. And there's actually a photo in the article of Mr. Ackerman's wife and Mickey Mouse. Here's where it gets interesting, Jim. Mr. Ackerman closes his story with this anecdote. On our way home that night, exhausted, my wife and I tried to remember what we wore on our first date. We couldn't, and agreed it was remarkable that Walt and Lillian had realized their vision with such fidelity to their own story. As we shuttled the kids up to their rooms, the receptionist stopped me. He asked how our stay was going. I told him how much we were enjoying it, but he quickly interrupted me with a question. It was about that morning's breakfast. He noticed we hadn't added a gratuity for the performer. Would I care to leave a little extra? I reached into my pocket and for the umpteenth time that day, happily handed over my credit card. Of course, I said, and paid the mouse his well-earned due. All right, that's the end of the quote. All right, so just so we're all clear, let me spell out what Mr. Ackerman is saying here, because it's frankly astonishing, right? A character meal bill that included a separate line item for performer gratuity. A front desk employee who had scanned Mr. Ackerman's folio in enough detail that day to notice the missing performer gratuity. The same employee is able to recognize Mr. Ackerman as he walks through the lobby. The same employee has the audacity to point out that he didn't tip Mickey Mouse. And then a front desk computer system that has exactly the right programming to accept Mr. Ackerman's credit card charge in such a way that the correct bookkeeping and payroll transactions happen so the performer gets that gratuity, the state taxes, FICA, and everything are properly accounted for. Okay, so as the photo shows, the outfit that Mickey Mouse is wearing in this photo, it only appears in one place, and that is the Four Seasons character breakfast at Ravello. I have receipts from Ravello from September of 2023, January of 2024, and literally from today. Somebody went today.
Okay.
None of those receipts include a line item for performer gratuity. And I've checked with others, and they do not recall a performer gratuity either. So just for kicks, I checked with the Four Seasons Orlando, and they essentially laughed at the possibility of getting their point of sale system to include a second line for performer gratuity. They had no idea if it was even possible. Okay. So I don't think it was the Four Seasons, even though that's where Mickey is, and he's only in his character breakfast there. But if we're talking about a different character meal, I also have receipts from all of those across Walt Disney World in 2024. None of them contain a line item for performer gratuity. Okay, so Mr. Ackerman happens to be a military veteran, so I also checked with Shades of Green. Shades of Green doesn't offer a character meal. You can't charge things outside of Shades of Green to your Shades of Green hotel room. And I have all of this in an email. Shades of Green doesn't have visibility into charges you incur outside of Shades of Green. So even if he was staying there, the receptionist couldn't see charges at another character meal. All right. And not to put too fine a point on it, but if Mr. Ackerman's hotel and the restaurant are owned by different entities, like if he ate breakfast at the Four Seasons but stayed at a Disney hotel, the odds are against there being a real-time computer connection that would convey that level of detail between them. So we're at the point, Jim, where there seems to exist a bunch of evidence that suggests there's no way this story could have happened. So my position is right now, this story is made up. Not only didn't it happen, it couldn't have happened the way it was described. So I contacted Mr. Ackerman and I contacted the Wall Street Journal to see if they can clarify this. So for example, I said, look, I could be completely wrong here. What would help would be, do you have a copy of your breakfast receipt with two gratuity lines, one of which that says performer gratuity, because that would basically settle this instantly? Or do you have a second transaction from that evening that clearly identifies it as a performer gratuity? Nobody's gotten back to me on this yet, Jim, and I don't expect them to, this week because it's a holiday week. But if I don't hear anything back from Monday, by Monday, I'll contact the Wall Street Journal again. But yeah, my position is this story couldn't have happened the way it was described.
And we were pre-gaming a bit before we got started here today, folks. And again, look, I get it. Going to Walt Disney World is expensive, and that seems to be the premise of Mr. Ackerman's story. But,
Yeah.
But at the same time, he didn't have to go this far. I mean,
You don't have to make stuff up about Disney being expensive.
No, that's it exactly.
Real life is worse.
No, that's it. And it's just sort of like, I always hate situations like this because it's you never want to have to call somebody out about something that, to be honest, can so easily be proved that it couldn't happen. So,
I mean, that's the thing. I guess there's it's been a while since I've been to, was it the Swan or Dolphin has a character brunch, I think. I mean, maybe there, but the photograph of Mickey in an outfit that only appears at the Four Seasons breakfast kind of leads him to believe that's it. So, I mean, the easiest way to demonstrate that this actually happened is to just show a receipt. Because I have other receipts that don't indicate it, so it'll be super interesting. Also, I mean, if it was the Four Seasons, I doubt the Four Seasons changed their POS systems twice in a year.
No,
to include it and then not. So anyway, a receipt would clear this up. We'll see.
We'll see. So,
all right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim gives us the history of EPCOT's Maelstrom ride. We'll be right back.
So are you one of those people who actually likes the idea of Christmas in July? You know, bringing some of the spirit of the season into what typically is the hottest time of year? Well, I don't know if I can help you hear those jingle bells, but I can perhaps suggest a way that will put a bit more jingle in your pocket, and that's Rocket Money. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you take back control. It gives you the tools you need to save more and spend less. And Rocket Money does this by offering up an array of useful features that will then help you find subscriptions, manage your bills, and even cancel reoccurring charges, all with a single click. And what I really like about Rocket Money is, well, thanks to this personal finance app's dashboard feature, I can now better monitor my income and spending. It also helps me set savings goals and identifies additional ways that I can then trim my budget. I mean, we all have stuff that we subscribe to these days, and while most Americans think that they're only spending $62 every month on subscriptions, the hard reality is what we're actually spending per month on subscriptions is a lot closer to $300. And that's how I'm using Rocket Money these days. I'm using it as a tool to help me trim my financial tree. Hey, trim the tree! And now we're back to Christmas in July. Look, you don't have to take my word for it when it comes to this personal finance app. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/DisneyDish. Again, that's rocketmoney.com/DisneyDish. One more time, for those people who are still vacuuming up pine needles from the Christmas tree they took down back in January. rocketmoney.com/DisneyDish. We thank them for sponsoring today's show.
And we're back. All right, Jim. I love the idea of talking about Norway because it's summer and it's very hot. Let's talk about Norway.
Well, but again, Norway is part of Scandinavia, which is a sub-region of Northern Europe, which, again, cooler this time of year. And by the way, Scandinavia as a term is used to describe those countries that are grouped on the Scandinavian peninsula, which are Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. And I bring this geography lesson up first because, well, the original plan for Epcot Center was that World Showcase was going to have a Scandinavian pavilion, not a Norway pavilion.
Really?
Yep. As far back as 1978, the Scandinavian Pavilion was part of Epcot Center. Interestingly enough, if you check out photographs that were made of the model for the park in 1978, the Scandinavian Pavilion would have been built where the UK Pavilion stands today. In fact, it would have cozied right up against the International Gateway. Unfortunately, funding for this regional pavilion was supposed to come from a consortium of Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish corporations who could never agree on the specific mix of elements for this soon-to-begin construction World Showcase Pavilion. And this is...
Oh, Jim, let me pause you there for 1 second. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Lego is Danish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And IKEA is Swedish, right?
Yep.
So they couldn't agree that whatever's going to go into Epcot, you'd have to build it yourself. Like that seems to be like the fundamental, like that's a foundational principle. We couldn't go from there.
Well, I love that. You come through the gate and they hand you that little wrench,
a little Allen wrench.
There we go.
And they're like, here are the pieces for your boat ride.
There we go. So interesting you mentioned Lego. We'll get to that in a moment. But all right. Anyway, all right. 1980. Epcot, again, Disney makes the decision to move Epcot's Scandinavian Pavilion from an opening day attraction to Phase 2, which was supposed to take place sometime between 1983 and 1988. By the way, Phase 2 of Epcot would have included, the seas. But by the way, this version of the seas, Len, was the one that had Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea, serving as the host narrator of the marquee attraction there. And interesting little side note here, Len. According to the Greeks, Poseidon was also the god in charge of earthquakes and horses. That's kind of a unique portfolio, don't you think?
That's the job responsibilities you get when other people quit and they're like, I guess this is yours now.
There you go. It's like see horses, see it works. Okay. Anyway, also Future World side, Phase 2 would have included the Space Pavilion. Also, World Showcase side would have included the Spain Pavilion, the Israel Pavilion, the Equatorial Africa Pavilion, which Len and Jim Schul and I are going to be talking about on a future Disney Impact, and, of course, the Scandinavian Pavilion. Now, Disney was so sure that these pavilions are actually going to be built around World Showcase Lagoon that as you walked around, if you're there for October of 1982, making your way around World Showcase, at the sites of where the Spain Pavilion, the Israel Pavilion, and the Equatorial Africa Pavilion were going to be built, there were actually signs put up to the effect of coming soon. And Scandinavia, on the other hand, so absolutely sure this is going to happen, Len. They built the bathrooms. Have you ever seen the
bathrooms existed before the pavilion?
They for years, Len. I mean, the park opens in again October 1st, 1982. We don't get our first guests experiencing the Maelstrom till July 5th, 1988. And again, they don't actually begin construction till 86 or thereabouts. The bathrooms stood there by themselves damn near 5 years.
Were the bathrooms themed?
Yes. I mean, that's...
Oh, God, now I need photographs of this now.
I mean, it's just...
A Scandinavian-themed bathroom in Epcot in, 1984.
Just standing there along the shore.
Yeah, bizarre.
But now, again, all well and good. But as we mentioned, that consortium of Norwegian, Danish, and Swedish companies that were going to underwrite the construction, one too many squabbles, and the deal falls apart. So that they literally walk away from negotiations, and here's Disney with its like, we have this block of Scandinavian-themed toilets.
We've already done the plumbing. The hard part's done. Right?
No, that's it exactly. So, and what especially makes this difficult is that, look, anybody who went to Epcot during that time, and especially walked around World Showcase, you had your choice of film-based attractions, whereas rides were few and far between. And the whole notion here was, right from the get-go, this Scandinavian Pavilion was going to have a boat ride. In fact, it was going to also be part of... There was actually a pair of boat rides that were going to be built on the eastern side of a World Showcase Lagoon. In fact, I think we've talked in the past about the Rhine River ride that was supposed to be a part of the German pavilion. I mean, hell, they had done all of the heavy lift on that. Again, in fact, you can still walk in today, and to the left is the entrance to the
restaurant.
Yeah, and
to the right is the arch for the would have been the right entrance. Yeah,
there we go.
Plain as day, right there. Yeah.
But anyway, the long-planned expansion of the German pavilion fell through for a number of reasons, and chief among these is that Epcot Center in year one failed to make its attendance and financial projections. And given that Disney had originally walked into this project and said, okay, our part of Epcot Center is going to be $400 million, but are the countries and the corporations that are doing World Showcase and Future World, they'll pick up the other 2/3 of this. And what wound up happening is that was actually reversed, Len. That in the end, Disney wound up paying. It was actually the companies and the countries that wound up with a relatively small $400 million investment in the project, where Disney had to shoulder $800 million worth of expenses. And where this got interesting is why Disney did that. And that was because when this project got announced, the way Disney sold it was, this is Walt's last best dream.
Oh, they were under pressure to make it as good as possible.
Well, no, that's it exactly. Especially when you consider that they had sort of done that pivot. Like, did we say city? No. Theme park.
Oh, right. They had already cut it down once.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the notion of we're in the middle of construction, the financials are getting out of control, and if anybody suspects that we're suddenly building Epcot on the cheap, they'll kill us. So that was the thing. But at the same time, here they are, the park opens in 82, it's now 83, they're looking at the attendance and the financials, and it's just sort of like, oh my God, people are telling us we need more rides, but the board is like, we are not throwing good money after bad. You have to figure this out.
Because right after Epcot opened, didn't they gut Imagineering anyway? Like, they got rid of a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, well, that was the interesting, the 1-2 punch of first Epcot opened in October of 82, and then Tokyo Disneyland opened in April of 83, and they had staffed up to complete both of these projects. There were 2,000 people working in Imagineering at that time, and as soon as Tokyo opened, they downsized to 400 people, Len. I mean, it was brutal. Well, anyway, okay, so now and especially pressure's on now, got to bring more rides into Epcot, and, the notion of, we built the block of toilets for Scandinavia.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so they're making the rounds yet again in Norway, Sweden, looking for companies that might be willing to step up to the plate. And as you mentioned, they're literally using this part as the pitch. It's like, the tough part's over. The plumbing's already in. And
plumbing's already done.
The plumbing's already done. And we'll eat that cost. You just have to build the pavilion itself. And what's so interesting about you bringing up Lego is because they actually had conversations with Lego. All right. Now, I want to stress here that the reason they did that is Lego's world headquarters are located in Billund, Denmark.
And there's like a Lego shop literally outside of Tivoli Gardens too, right?
Well, and again, very interesting that you mentioned Tivoli Gardens, because that was, when it came time to discuss the boat ride, especially with Lego as the potential sponsor of the now Denmark pavilion, the notion was like, well, all right, what if the boat ride floated us past miniature recreations of famous Danish landmarks, like, for example, Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen. But what would make this a very Lego specific experience is those miniature recreations of these Danish landmarks would be built out of Legos.
And an idea that would come back later on.
It would.
Foreshadowing, Jim, foreshadowing.
But now where this gets especially interesting is that Lego really, 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 really wanted to get in business with Disney. And part of the reason for that is they had already opened the very first Legoland park. It actually opened in June of 1968. And kind of interesting, Len, just down the road from the company's world headquarters. And it's actually... I was surprised to learn this. It's actually Denmark's #1 tourist attraction, and I knew because you love Tivoli Garden. In fact, you and Laurel got there, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Last year.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
Wonderful. Yeah, super fun.
Okay, but here's the thing. Tivoli Gardens in a typical year has 1.4 million visitors, whereas Legoland, again, the original in Billund, Denmark, it has 1.6. So it is just a little bit ahead of Tivoli. Wow. All right. But anyway, Lego really wants to have this sponsorship of the EPCOT's Denmark Pavilion happen because they want to get a relationship going with Disney and then see where it goes.
This sounds like, doesn't this sound a little bit like Disney's original venture with the big red boat prior to them starting Disney Cruise Line?
There you go.
All right, okay.
Okay. No, that's it exactly. So, and now, mind you, obviously, this sponsorship deal did not happen. And we'll get to the specifics as to why in a moment. Lines of communications between the two companies did stay open and remain open at this point. In fact, for example, we got our World of Lego store at downtown Disney, October of '96.
That's a fantastic Lego store, actually.
It is. But what's interesting is that very same year, in fact, in March of '96, was when the world's second Legoland park opened. That was built on the site of the previous Windsor Safari Park over in the United Kingdom, which closed its...
I've been to that Legoland Windsor.
There we go. Yes.
Utterly charming. So Windsor Castle, obviously right there, home of the monarchy, but Windsor is utterly charming. And, Jim, that was I remember getting there on day one. So it's like, I'm super jet lagged and everything, right? And I get in and they're playing EPCOT theme park music at the entrance to Legoland. And I'm like, am I dead? Like, did I die? And like, what, like, cause like you're jet lagged, you're in another country, you're eating strange food, it's in the strange time, and you're like, where do I know this music from? And I call my friend Mike Newell from Mouse World Radio. I'm like, Mike, where's this? Like, I know this music. Where's it from? He's like, it's from EPCOT. Where are you? I'm like, I'm in England. He's like, are you in England? I'm like, yeah, I'm in England. I'm like, okay. Yeah, but one of the features in Legoland Windsor that I remember is they do these miniature recreations of European landmarks. Yeah.
Yep. And by the way, that playbook, finding where a previous attraction, in this case, the Safari Park, which had closed in January of '92, they would return to that playbook. In fact, they did the exact same thing in Winter Haven when Cypress Gardens finally closed for good in September of 2009. By January of the following year, they bought that park, and that eventually became the home of Legoland Florida, which opened October of 2011. But anyway,
it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird that Disney has a store in Disney Springs for Lego when Lego is a theme park competitor that's like a 45-minute drive from it. It'd be like having a Universal Monsters store in Disney Springs. It's just bizarre.
This is true. But however, again, remember, this store opens in October of 1996. Now, the next Disney park to open after that is Disney's Animal Kingdom. And that's April of 1998, so 2 years later. And even as Disney's fourth park opens. I mean, well, look. In fact, we've talked about this on this show recently. In fact, it's the, I want to get the name right because I keep calling it the Reedy Creek Improvement. Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. Okay,
Right.
You mentioned that. In fact, you actually went to the meeting where they had updated their site plan, right? Where it was
Right. Oh, yeah.
now on Disney property, in addition to the four theme parks that already exist and the two water parks. Correct me if I'm wrong. There is sites for one major theme park and two minor theme parks. Is that correct? Am I getting that right?
That's right. So so a major theme park would be, Animal Kingdom, EPCOT, so on. In the minor parks, they're thinking, they're considering things like Typhoon Lagoon, Blizzard Beach, stuff like that.
Okay, so now picture this. This is still a Disney company that remembers the pain of Epcot. Again, that notion of we're only going to spend $400 million and oh my God, we end up spending twice that amount. And so the notion is and again, this is a Disney that at some point we're going to do a fifth theme park. And again, Disney and Lego have a relationship now and are having conversations. And Lego wants to get into the Central Florida market. And this, Len, is when the conversation starts about basically Lego licensing the right to build a theme park on Disney World property.
So this is interesting for a couple of reasons. One is, so by this point, Disney's built out all four Walt Disney World theme parks.
There we go.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so they know how whatever initial budget you have is basically fiction, right? A pipe dream.
Oh, yeah.
That it's always going to cost more. But also, the current management now has experience with Tokyo, with Euro Disney, right?
Yep.
And then they're probably in talks with at least one other country about this sort of licensing deal. So this fits in sort of like the mindset that executives would have had in the late 1990s around a licensing deal, but domestically, right? They hadn't done it. They've done it internationally. They hadn't done it domestically, but okay.
Well, again, and you're absolutely on the money there. But the other the card to sort of lay down here is it's the notion of, okay, if we build a fifth park, but again, we don't necessarily build the fifth park. Lego pays to build the fifth park. We still benefit. People stay an extra day in our hotels. They get an extra meal in the restaurant there. I mean, there are so many ways that Disney would benefit from this thing being built on their property.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So why doesn't it happen? Well, again, back to April of 1998, Animal Kingdom opens, and almost immediately, Disney begins to notice that the fourth theme park is cannibalizing attendance at EPCOT and Disney's Hollywood Studios. And then,
so is this because like Americans only have a certain amount of vacation?
There we go.
No matter what,
there we go.
So we're either going to spread it among 3 parks, 4 parks, or 5 parks. It's still the same number of days, no matter how.
There we go.
No matter how thin you slice it, it's still baloney. Okay, all right, I got it. Okay.
And so, in this scenario now, suddenly a fifth theme park doesn't make as much sense. And
yeah, the financials start to look bad because you're cannibalizing things. You're just moving money from one pocket to the other. Okay.
But at the same time, I mean, the notion of, well, wow, we could get a fifth park we wouldn't have to pay for it. But on the other hand, we'd still experience the same issue over at Animal Kingdom and EPCOT and who knows, the studios. And so it becomes obvious to the folks in Bill End that Disney is losing its enthusiasm. So they begin to look for other opportunities in the Central Florida market. And this is when they notice what's going on with Cypress Gardens. They keep changing hands. And eventually, again, when that park closes, September of 2009, Merlin Entertainment, that's the company that operates all of the Legoland theme parks, they actually get all of that property, Len, in Winter Haven for $22 million.
Basically $0, yeah.
There we go.
And Merlin's huge. I mean, they're very, very, very big in Europe. They're not so big in the United States yet, but huge in Europe. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But again, they planted flag. I mean, for example, in 99 is when the first stateside Legoland park opened down in Carlsbad, California. And more to the point, as you mentioned about the Imagination Store, I mean, Disney and Lego, they're still friendly. There's for example, we got our Imagination Store that opened at Downtown Disney in Anaheim, January of 2001. Anyway, back to 83, 84, again, Lego did really want this to happen. But
Right.
but in the end, the reason they couldn't ultimately commit to sponsoring the Denmark Pavilion, it's actually it's Duplo's fault.
Duplo's fault. These are the big chunky Legos, right?
Well,
for
no,
kids?
that's it exactly.
Small children.
They had the line had been introduced in '69, but the figures that went with the Duplo blocks didn't show up till '77, and the company had made a strategic decision for the Christmas of 1983. It's like, all right, we need to make these things. Kids are telling us the figures are not playable, so we literally need to go back to the factory and redesign these figures so they bend at the waist. All right, but that meant retooling the assembly line and new equipment, and it was just one of these things where it's like, I am really sorry, Disney wants $10 to $15 million from us to build this pavilion.
Yeah, they don't have it. Yeah.
And at this point in the company's history, we just cannot do that.
I mean, I think it is so. I mean, I play with Legos. I still have Legos and I love them. But yeah, they went through this period like in the like mid 80s to the 90s where the company was sort of on tenuous financial footing.
Well, it's so interesting you said that, because that was, if you think about it, it's the time of the rise of the video game, and it's just
right,
like,
exactly.
how do we
people wanted electronic stuff? Yeah.
How do we compete with that?
But now, you got to give Lego management credit now, because they are doing extremely well, and I think a lot of that is through licensing agreements.
Oh yeah,
where they have like, here's Harry Potter's castles, or here's Hogwarts. Laurel and I were in the Lego store a couple of weeks ago, and there was one of the things that I like when I go in is to try and find the Lego sets with the largest number of pieces.
Oh yeah,
and there's some Star Wars stuff, or I think it's Harry Potter, with like 7,500 pieces.
I mean, they're amazing.
It's a full-time job to put it together.
No, that's it exactly. I look at the boxes and say that looks wonderful, and I look at the number and it's like, no. Well,
I mean, you and I are at the age now where we start to think like, do I have enough time left on this earth?
There we go. There we go.
Is this how I'm going to spend my remaining time, my golden years? No, but I mean, you got to give Lego credit. They've tried a number of things. The products are just fantastic. I love a Lego. I think I tell people, I played with Legos as a kid, and I think it helped make me a better programmer, because you can manipulate shapes in your head, and there's a lot of abstract thinking in programming. So yeah, I love a Lego.
More to the point, in fact, whenever folks are down in Florida, and I get that people primarily these days, they do Disney, they do Universal, but it's one of these things where in fact, I have literally told family members who are headed down there, especially with small children, it's like, no, don't go to Disney, go to Legoland. Between the Peppa Pig park now and
the water park.
Yeah, so much more kid-friendly experience, less complicated.
This is what I think. Like, if you've got kids under age 8, and I think you and I actually talked about this back when, remember when the studios had closed basically a third of the park to build Toy Story Land and Galaxy's Edge?
Yep.
And we're like, well, there's nothing here for kids. But Legoland is like 45 minutes away. Why don't you just go to Legoland?
There you go.
And I still think that is an excellent option rather than a Disney park if you've got kids in that demographic, especially if the kids like Legos. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So anyway, again, Lego just could not at that moment in 83, 84, due to financial commitments, had the money. So Disney had to look elsewhere, and eventually now they line up this group of Norwegian businessmen who have agreed, okay, we will fund a 90,000 square foot structure next to the bathrooms. So it's like, all right, there we go.
You know that the bathrooms are explicitly referenced in the contract. You just know it.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. Again, it's got to be a boat ride, because again, this park is desperate for rides. And more to the point, if you start to go through the early press materials for this project, first of all, it's Norway Gateway to Scandinavia. That's the actual name.
Screw you, Denmark.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
All right. And also, What's interesting is from when they announced the deal in 85, and next week's show, when we'll get into what was announced, because Len, very different than what opened in July of 1988. I mean, for example, there were a dozen or more animatronic trolls that were supposed to be in the show that got cut, not to mention an actual Tesla coil that was supposed to fire over your head during the North Sea storm, so you would see actual...
Really? Like the thing from the Frankenstein movies with the giant electric bolts?
No, that's it exactly. That was
Jim,
it.
Jim, the first person with a metal implant in their
There we go. And that is part of the story we will share next week on the second and final installment of our look back at Maelstrom, the boat ride at Norway. So,
if I was in that Imagineering decision, my question would be, okay, but exactly how many people would die?
Well,
it's a great effect.
Well, just a little.
How many? You mean you want an omelet? You got to break some eggs. I'm just saying.
Well, just a little teaser for next week's show. I mean, they did the test inside of the building where they had the simulator for Toy Story, for Star Tours. And so a bunch of Imagineers went inside of this metal structure and watched this amazing Tesla coil fire off. And then it was like, so they're in a boat on water,
which isn't grounded.
No.
Wait, so they're gonna be the tallest thing in the area?
Yeah.
Oh, God. All right. So a couple of, this is beautiful, by the way, Jim. I cannot wait to hear the second half of this. So a couple of things. One, if Lego wants to put out a 5,000 piece set that is basically the original version of the Maelstrom ride, Jim, I would buy that right now.
Okay. All right.
Also, is Legoland still the, most popular tourist attraction in Denmark?
That is my understanding. I actually, again, out ahead of today's show, because I knew you'd ask if I said that Tivoli was not the number one, I knew you'd challenge me on it. So it's like, all right, let me check. And it's again, 1.6 million for Legoland and Billund, and then for some reason only 1.4 for Tivoli. But if I'm picking,
all right, so let me just throw this idea at her. You're familiar with the pharmaceutical company Novo Nordisk, right?
Yep.
So I have enormous respect for Novo Nordisk. I've talked to a number of their people. I think they're basically the Apple of pharmaceuticals. They do very high quality, very expensive things. Novo Nordisk's market cap, I believe, is larger than the entire GDP of Denmark, and they're based in Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying, if Novo Nordisk wants to open a theme park and call it like Ozempic Land, where you give out free, I mean, they're not going to make any money on restaurant revenue because no one's hungry, but, they could charge $800 a month for admission and that'd be fine. I'm just spitballing the ideas at her, Jim. I'm just saying.
Reminds me, as soon as we wrap up here, I got to go do my Ozempic. So anyway, okay.
Semaglutide, the ride, 3D.
There we go. All right.
All right. Okay. Enough for now.
Okay.
All right, folks. Oh my God, this is great.
Yeah.
All right, folks. That's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Our most recent show with Imagineer Jim Scholl tells the story of how Animal Kingdom's Navi River journey led to a new generation of advanced audio animatronic characters. Check it out at patreon.com/JimHillMedia. And you can find more of Jim at JimHillMedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. Were produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey, who'll be bringing his 71 Hemi Cuda convertible, nicknamed Bluebell, to the Georgia Mountain Moonshine Cruise Inn this coming July 26th and 27th at the Mashburn Arena on Doug Gap Battle Road in beautiful downtown Dalton, Georgia. While Eric's doing that, please go onto iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We'll see you on the next show.